is the U.S. equipped to identify threats like this? Because this guy apparently had a website. He was guilty of so many crimes that local reporters knew him by name and knew his face. So clearly he should have been scooped up by someone before this happened. How about the U.S.? Are we better prepared here?
The FBI Joint Terrorism Task Forces around the United States have been doing a very good job neutralizing these lone wolf attacks before they strike.
All right, joining us now is Jonathan T. Gilliam, President of United States Continued Service, LLC, former Navy SEAL, police officer, and special agent for the FBI. Always great to see you. Love the jacket. Look at this.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's talk about very serious stuff, unfortunately. Right. In addition to Sydney, which, I mean, pales in comparison to what took place in Pakistan with over 120 children murdered, some beheaded. That wasn't a lone wolf. So let's stick for a minute to the lone wolf in Sydney. Are we better prepared here than, say, Sydney was for preventing such a lone wolf attack, or is it unpreventable?
Well, we have to look at what levels we're talking about prevention. You know, we obviously have the JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force is comprised of almost all local and state and federal law enforcement in each state. They have representatives. So our ability to collect information and our ability to act on that information is probably second to none alongside the Brits. The Australians do very well because they share information. They're our one of our biggest allies. The problem, though, is that our immigration, similar to the immigration policies in Australia, have allowed for a lot of these people to come in unchecked. And that's a real issue. You know, politics or not, that's an issue.
Well, this guy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, this guy, you'd think they'd want him behind bars, and any opportunity they had, you'd think they would lock him up. I don't know much about their criminal justice system, but he was out on bail for all his violent past and all his history. He was out on bail being implicated in his wife's murder, and they let him out on bail to boot.
Right. So we have a similar problem here where once we identify people, we're going to have to, and I'm not just talking about the authorities, the American people need to realize that there's a certain group of people that have been identified as people who can attack and will attack, and if they do take you hostage, the likelihood of it ending well is almost zero now.
Yeah.
The American people need to realize that, because you may go to have a coffee in the morning, or you may just go to work like on 9/11, but it may turn into a life or death struggle. And how you react to that and how you're prepared before that is going to make the biggest difference, along with our ability to actually spot these things from a federal standpoint.
How does the average person leave for work, go for a cup of coffee in the morning before heading up to the office? How do they prepare for that?
You have to visualize it. You know, Olympic swimmers, Olympic runners, SEALs, one of the biggest things that we do is we visualize the situation, the game, the competition before we go into it. And it makes us perform at a much higher level because our anxiety is much lower. People need to envision and play the what-if game. If I was going to attack me, where would I do this? And how would that happen? And how am I going to defend against that? How am I going to react? And as you could see in the videos of some of these people, the poor girl holding up that sign for the guy in Sydney, Australia in the window, I mean, she crumples in fear and exhaustion. You have to be ready for that, and you have to understand of what may happen, how it may unfold, because you may get a chance to jump on the guy or to flee. And if you can't get your legs running because you're crippled by fear, you're going to be stuck.
What about being crippled by fear as a parent when it comes to our kids in school after 10 years after Beslan, and now we see what happened here? And you know, I mean, there's just any terrorist group or few lone wolves in a car could drive up to any school almost in this country and just do what they did in those situations.
You know, again, the parents have to be able to forward think this. The kids need to forward think what to do.
What do you tell your kid? What do you tell a high school kid when he goes to school every day, so you don't scare the crap out of him as well?
You need to be realistic, and you need to know that things can't happen in school now. I mean, the number of schools we have, as per the ability to get operatives in to do that, the chances are you're not going to be a part of that, but you need to be aware of the situation that it potentially can have. And I will tell you this, if there's anything that anybody can take out of this, two things. One, you need to mentally prepare yourself. And two, if you can run, run. I've not heard of one child in a school shooting that ran that got shot. They all run and live. And I'm not saying you need to defy what the schools are telling you, but the schools themselves need to think about this. Sheltering in place is almost like keeping your mouth shut on an airplane if it gets hijacked. That is the way we used to do it, and there needs to be a rethinking of tactics both by law enforcement and by individuals.
All right, finally, a note was obtained or put out by these hackers, the Sony hackers, who are warning against 9/11-like attacks for any theater that shows The Interview, the movie in question here. Rhetoric, just just trying to scare people.
I actually like when they put out these statements because it actually heightens people's awareness. I'm not saying I like it, but
Right.
I think it's a good thing for people to be a little nervous when they go. And my good friend Brandon Webb once said, if you can get a small, very powerful flashlight, it's one of the greatest tools you can have in a place like a theater. If somebody raises a gun and you hit them in the face with that flashlight, and I'm not talking about hitting them, but hit them with the light, it may give you 1 or 2 seconds to get down or run.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Would you go see them? Well, I'm asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go see
You
it.
go.
I recommend everybody go see it.
Flashlight in each hand.
American
He's going.
Sniper.
He's going. All right, great to see you, man.
got it.
Always
Always good to be
appreciate
here.
it. Thank you. All right, Jonathan T. Gilliam, ladies and gentlemen. Heed what you just heard, because this man knows, and it's just frightening. As a parent, as a person who comes into the city every day, and you wherever you are. Okay, up next, the Malzberg panel. But first, it was 1862. The president, Abraham Lincoln, changed the course of the Civil War in American history with his preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. Let's take a look at the making of that historic document with this hour's American Moment.
Abraham Lincoln began the war between the states with a single stated purpose: to preserve the Union. So it surprised everyone when in July of 1862, President Lincoln announced his intentions to issue an Emancipation Proclamation to free the Southern slaves. Lincoln was urged to delay his proclamation until the Union Army could boast a battlefield victory. That opportunity came at the Battle of Antietam, when Union forces drove Lee's army out of Maryland. 5 days later, on September 22, 1862, President Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, stating slaves in those areas still in rebellion within 100 days will be freed. This action made slavery the focus of the war and ultimately caused France and England to withdraw their support of the South. The following January, Lincoln issued the actual Emancipation Proclamation, stating that all persons held as slaves within the rebel states are, and henceforth shall be, free. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.